welcome everyone to another inventRight TV show. My name is Andrew Krause. I co-founded inventRight with Stephen Key over 21 years ago. We've had students in over 65 countries during that time. We have a very special guest on today. His name is Ryan Bricker. He's one of our former students, and he licensed a couple products. The first one we're gonna show right here before we get into talking to him is called the Whiskey Wedge, and it's sold over 1 million units. So let's take a quick look at this video, and then we'll get right into the interview with Ryan.
The Whiskey Wedge, the artful way to perfectly chill your favorite spirits. It's the newest slant on sipping whiskey.
All right, welcome back. Ryan, really cool product, man. Really, really cool product. And you have another product you're going to talk about too. But let's talk about the Whiskey Wedge. Let's just first start off with, how did you come up with this idea? It's a really practical idea. It's a fun idea. It's a cool idea. Some people, when they're drinking, they want to look cool, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
I didn't talk to you about that before. Is there a cool factor here?
Well, literally, it's cool.
Literally,
yeah. And, it's a visual. So where the idea came up from, I was actually kind of not working, but this worked a little bit backwards. It wasn't an idea that I had just on my own out of thin air. I had met the owners of the company Corksicle, and they had their own kind of product that they invented, which looks like this. I wish I had it. Looks like an icicle. It goes in a bottle of wine. Mm-hmm. And they did an incredible job kind of bringing that product to market. And just through some conversations, he was like, hey, help us come up with new ideas. And so for me, it was a very easy transition to like, okay, you've got kind of wine covered. Let's move into kind of the spirits and liquors. And it was just kind of looking what was out there and what did I like. Well, I love the feel of a heavy glass, and I love kind of a large piece of ice in the glass. But I was like, what if we did something different where the glass didn't move around and hit your nose, and how could it adhere to the glass and be more of a visual product? And it was literally that simple to create a triangle of ice that's kind of stuck in the glass. And so it is cool, and it creates a visual experience, not just the functional experience. And so, I mean, it's a classic, very, very simple idea, but it's just, for them, it's just been one of their kind of perennial products. And
did you say I'm trying to solve a particular problem with this? Or was it kind of like you came up with it and then you're like, oh yeah, it solves this problem? Because not all inventors are like specifically trying to solve a problem. So you come up with cool stuff and you're like, oh, but it does have this and this benefit. Or were you directly, was the ice cubes hitting your nose and you didn't like that? Was that it? Or
exactly. It was the initial premise was, how can I create something different in that space? And so for me, that's where the idea of a ice that wasn't moving, ice that was kind of visual and really kind of functional. I thought about how the drink, the whiskey, was flowing off the edge of the ice angle. And so, a problem, not a problem in the sense that real problems of people's lives, but a problem in the sense of kind of how can you functionally kind of do something different with ice in the shape and form and the way that it's kind of put in the glass to create a different product, to differentiate yourself in the market.
Most inventors are very visual, but you're an architect, so you're probably very visual with trying to solve problems. Do you feel that lent itself to this, the way you're thinking about it?
Yeah, 100%. I'm both visual and I call it form and function. That when I think a lot of inventors are like this. They see something that's not working optimally or correctly or feels funny. It's not balanced. So what if it did this or had this feature? And so when you combine kind of features, things that do things, and kind of the form, can it be beautiful? Can it be simple and clean? And so, like, to me, that's, as a designer, I'm trying to marry both the form and the function together. And that creates a great product. That way someone sees it on the shelf and intuitively knows sees what it does and kind of wants to buy that product.
So you've sold over 1 million units with this company Corksicle that you licensed to. How does that make you feel?
It's great. It's amazing. What really makes me feel good is that going to online and on Instagram, seeing people kind of tag, hashtag whiskey wet, and showing this gift, because a lot of times it's a gift that someone receives or gives, and to see people kind of share your product, and that, Uncle Joe gave me this awesome glass, and seeing real people really use it, share it, that's what really, it just brings joy that you had this, that one simple idea, that people are out there kind of sharing and
Who's
enjoying.
buying this? Women, men? Women are buying it for men as a gift?
I
Men
think
buying?
so. Like when I talk to, and that's a great question. Is like you get into the mind of the buyer, and
Yeah.
the buyer and the consumer can be different. And so in this case, I think, in talking to the brand, it's a lot of women are buying it in their different retail spheres for men. So they're buying it for the men in their life, and so that's another way to be approaching kind of the way you're thinking about products, like who's
Right.
purchasing it for somebody. So in this case, they know Uncle Joe loves whiskey. I bet he doesn't have this. They see this, and so it's a perfect gift idea.
Yeah, nice. So, did you find out about the concept of licensing from us, or did you know about it before?
I had never heard of it in my life, and I had always been kind of this inventing. I've always had ideas, and I thought inventing meant building some giant hovercraft in your backyard and crazy patents, and you just leveraged your house, and now you're broke. And so I never did anything with any ideas I had until I was reading, Tim Ferriss's book 4 Hour Work Week, where he introduces Stephen Key and the idea of licensing. I immediately read One Simple Idea. I think it's on my bookshelf right there, and just the idea of licensing, like that just was like, oh, that changed everything for me. I was like, wait a minute, I don't have to take things to market. I can just take my ideas. Because that's kind of what I do for a living in architecture. It's like I'm just putting ideas on paper and other people are building it. And so for me, once I learned about licensing, that really changed the game. And I was
I'm
like,
sure you're good. I haven't seen anything you built as an architect, but I'm pretty certain you're a good architect. But is there a difference between being serving a client, one client, this is what I want, give me what I want, maybe it's not what you want to do, and doing something like this where it's all you? Well, it's not all you. You're looking at customers, you're looking at the company, but you came up with the invention. Does it take things up a little notch from what you've experienced as an architect to, like, as far as being fulfilling and expressing yourself and doing what you really want, not just what that one client wants because they're paying you? It's like,
yeah, exactly. No, it's a little more, they're both of them have the idea of creating something that's new and novel, whether I'm designing a place or a plaza or a bridge. Like a lot of times I'm trying to create something that has a shape and form maybe that's new, but you are also working with a lot of kind of standard parts, if you will, in creating products. You're right.
well, let me put it this way. You're
You
satisfying
are,
over a million people with this thing, and maybe people can come into something you designed as an architect over time and they enjoy it, and you could satisfy a million people. But you created this thing, and people are like really interacting. They're not walking by it or kind of noticing it. They're like using it and telling their friends and family about it. It must be something new for you to a certain extent.
Well, it's totally new. Yeah, it has a totally different layer of intimacy because you're holding a product. And the big thing is, if a million people go visit a project of mine, like I don't get paid a million times.
There you
And
go.
so, total game changer when you get paid each time someone buys something. So that's the big shift for sure.
Yeah. So, well, I want to talk about things that you struggle with licensing, but first I want you to show your other product because it's really cool too.
So, along that very same line of thinking is form and function. When I smoke cigars too, whenever I had a cigar and a glass, let's say, I would hold it like this. I would hold the glass and the cigar in the same hand, and I very just simple. It's like, what if the glass started to perform that function for me, and just by adding this kind of enclosure that can kind of hold the cigar, now I can kind of set my glass down with my cigar. I can hold it much easier together. And so it's just a very classic form and function idea. I mean, if that's not simple, I don't know what it is. Even though there's
You're
a
just
lot of engineering that went into that
Oh, it wasn't
profile.
as simple as you think. Were there manufacturing issues with that one?
Yeah, it took about 2 years for us to figure out how to manufacture that correctly.
Wow.
It's a really complicated way to blow glass, kind of inverted like that. So it took time to
How
come to
many
market.
how many units has that one sold?
I haven't added up. I mean, maybe 500,000 or on its way,
Wow, that
but it's
much. Wow.
hasn't
Okay.
been in the market as long.
Can you combine the two products? Can you use them
You know,
together?
I literally I did. I showed an option for that. I was like, well, we could do both. But a little got a little silly. But
Yeah, yeah. I was just curious.
yeah, yeah.
So tell us, because when we bring people on that have licensed product, you never licensed a product before, right?
I had not. These were my two. I created a logo once. I trademarked it and licensed a
Okay.
T-shirt idea. And
But
then somebody came after me for that infringement of wasn't
licensing a
really
logo? Wow.
well. It was trademark, and they thought it was trademark infringement,
Oh,
which is
okay.
from my college alma mater. I don't want to get you don't want your college like coming after you, but anyway, different
Well, they
story.
come after you all the time. They always want money from you, right? They not that
Yeah,
way, but they want you to donate money. And
I
so,
was already donating. I'm like, guys, now you guys want to like come after my IP, so whatever. But
but anyway, so you're fairly new to licensing, and so what were everybody struggles with different things. Obviously, you got a pretty strong design background, so that part's not that hard for you. But people struggle with different things. What were some of the things that you struggled with?
yeah, I think yeah, as you said, like the design and idea and communicating and visualizing or even making prototypes or models, that's easy. I love that. Like that's kind of my natural gifting. The going out and finding brands, initially I was like, oh, I hate that. Can't I just somebody just take my idea? I don't want to go hunt people down. Um, finding the right brand, like, that's kind of fun because you learn about different brands. Then go and finding the people and contacting them. I initially like hated it, or even some
Uh-huh.
cold calls or email, like hated it. And then after a while, it becomes a game because you're like trying to get to the
Oh.
right person, finding them. And after a couple times, you realize, man, I can find almost anyone and get to them just with enough
Hmm.
digital sleuthing and LinkedIn. You can find almost anyone, and so or finding a relationship, finding a way in. So then, strangely enough, that became fun for me after I hated it.
Uh-huh.
And and we've been together at trade shows. Like trade shows are great. It's a great place to meet people, have some actual relationships and follow ups. And so the part that I hated really was finding the companies and communicating. Like
Do you like going to trade shows?
I love them. Like I've been to the Housewares show like 7 years in a row up until COVID.
Did
And
did you like it a little better because you can make things happen a little bit faster? I mean, you can make it happen fast on the phone and via LinkedIn and email too, but you're not looking at somebody. Have you gotten used to the outreach other than trade shows? Like you said, it's a game. How long did it take you to really get there? Was it 3 months, 6 months, a year? Where you really like, I know this is kind of fun. Like I've had people tell me, look, I hated it and I still don't like it, but I know I have to do it. And then I have other people that say, I hated it, but now I actually think it's fun. Like you get an engineer like that's like they think salespeople are evil, and the last thing that I would ever want to do is reach out and do that. And now that same person is like, I'm excited about it. I mean,
yeah, it's a fun evolution of the product. I don't know how long it took me. I mean, for definitely months, or maybe 6 months. I think once you get a few wins, once you get a few people that
ah,
just contact you back, once you find out, once it's like anything. Once you just do it a few times and get some momentum, and it's really not that bad. At the end of the day, they're just people. Like you think that there's some, imaginary figure in some kind of fairyland. They're just people at the end of the day, and you're just trying to help them and bring them a great new product.
you sound
And if
like
they
me.
want
I've
to
been
try,
saying this a lot lately. At the beginning, you're not licensing to a company. You're just trying to get a person, an individual person like you and me, interested so they can show it around at the company. So if we bring it down to that level, it's not like this big giant company. It's like you're just trying to talk to a person and gain their interest. It sounds like that helped you.
Yeah, 100%. And that's kind of where the trade show helps a little bit once you actually meet some real people. And I mean, you'll find yourself, I got invited to some pretty giant brands. Like go to, hey, if you're in LA, come by the factory and stuff. So it's like, yeah, they're just people at the end of the day. Give yourself some grace and some time, and swing the bat a few times, and keep at it. Like,
and keep counting those no's. Keep chalking up those no's.
Lots of them. Oh, yeah.
Well, let's talk about one other thing that I know you wanted to talk about is the benefits, and you want to talk about benefits and downsides of staying in one category, staying with one industry, if you will. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a question I've kind of brought to inventRight as I've had some success. I think some of my problems is I've got a lot of ideas across a lot of categories, and they're mainly retail products. And I try to think of products that are fairly easy to make and come to market. I'm not coming up with the next hovercraft car or something. And so that being said, I'm coming up with, something in housewares or barware or hardware or sports equipment or packaging and the problem with that is, as you know, it's like you get kind of a wide lens and you're having to learn each kind of industry again, and you're just it's a longer game of reaching out. And I remember asking Steven, I was like, hey, if I really want to go pro here, and one of his advice was like, man, stick with the category and just dive in. And this makes sense. Get to know everyone. If it's toys, get to know all the companies, get to know all the people, and then you start to know the trend and the market. I think that makes a lot of sense for people. It's just hard for me because I'm thinking of too many different things.
But not as hard because you're enjoying it as a game and reaching out. So for you to jump into a completely different industry, you're not so afraid of reaching out to people you don't know. On LinkedIn or on the phone or everywhere else.
I'm not afraid. It's just harder. You'll get it like, I had a packaging idea, still have a packaging idea. That's a totally different world than retail products. And I think you even said it. It's a treasure trove if you can break it in because the volumes are huge. But it is so hard to really find out who's actually making this stuff and how they're selling it. And it's just each of these industries are just a little different. And it is kind of fun to figure it out, but it just takes time. But
yeah. Well, you talked about going pro. So some people have been listening. I talked to a guy this morning. He's like, I want to go full time, Andrew. Now he was actually currently out of a job. And I'm like, well, first you need to get a job so you have the stability of money coming in, because it takes a while for money to come in when you're licensing, doesn't it? It's not like immediate. Yeah. And so I said, if you really want to go pro, give yourself 2 to 3 years and don't quit your day job until you have a couple products licensed, because you never know when one can drop off. Maybe it doesn't make sense anymore. You have any additional advice for somebody that wants to go pro and do it full time? And do you want to do that eventually, or just you really enjoy architecture and you really enjoy this and you're just going to keep doing both?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy, but to answer your question, I think, you've got to, it's kind of a slow game. I mean, it totally depends on the product, totally depends on the brand. If you think you're just going to quit your day job, you better be getting a product that will also really last. I mean, some of these products are just, could be very seasonal, or it could just last a couple of years. It could get knocked off, there's so many different factors that go into kind of the lifespan of a product. And to your point, it doesn't, the moment you have a great idea, to pitching it to them wanting it, liking it, signing a deal, and then going through all the R&D and manufacturing. I mean, it could take a year. It could take multiple years. In some cases, it could take months, depending on the product.
Sure.
So, until that, royalty income is very stable and taking over your current kind of income. It's a hard thing to do. But for me, it's like I still enjoy my architecture career, and I'm working on some really meaningful projects. If I hit the mother load, I would love to do full-time inventing. I've got to get a couple big home runs to really to do that, though, I think.
Well, yeah. So let's talk about that real quick, and then we'll wrap up here. So,
Yeah.
so where in your dream world, where would you like to go with your inventing career?
In some ways, I feel like I'm living the dream. It's just not landing the deals per se. Like I've had a lot of great ideas. I've had a number that have come really close with other, some huge companies. I mean, some giant companies and some small. And I've just had the full gamut of interest to, a giant multinational corporation like doing full R&D and then kind of pulling the plug at the
Mhm.
last second. And so, um, if just a few of those really kind of hit, um, for me that would be kind of the dream, is to have, and just the way I'm wired is to have different products in different categories.
Yeah, yeah, and you're
Not just
enjoying
the
it,
and
and
enjoying it.
you're not afraid of reaching out anymore. You weren't afraid. You just didn't like it. I
And
use
it,
the word afraid.
yeah, I mean, I was probably afraid at the beginning, and they didn't like it, and now it's kind of fun. But it does take time. I think that's where some people might get frustrated. It's like, wow, this is taking a long time for them to get back, or this, or,
Hmm.
just
How do you handle that? How do you, most of our students will work on multiple projects. So you're keeping yourself busy with
right.
something while you're waiting to hear back.
That's a
Or
great.
you got 20 non-specific no's, not at this time, not a right match. And then you just send it to, I tell our students this and our fans too. And like, if you got a lot of non-specific no's, you can resend that to everybody that said no like 8 months later. And you don't really know what's going on with that marketing manager. Like you didn't get to have a conversation with them. They didn't give you specifics, and they were just they might have loved your product, but they're so busy with so many projects and so many emails, and they're like, not at this time. But they were like, this is really cool, but you had no idea. So you send it 8 months later, and 2 weeks later, their boss said, we need new products. And now that same one that said no, and if you're not doing this, I'd advise you to, is now showing interest. Now, if 5 companies say it won't work because of this, or it's a relationship like Corksicle, like you have, and and you got to talk to them, and they're like, no, because of this, okay, maybe you don't resend to them. But so there's a lot of
And
ways
staff
to,
changes. I've shown things multiple times because they've got new people in. Oh, they've got a new marketing person, new head of government. You know, yeah,
so
you never.
that was your personal experience too. That's how you've done that.
I've I've rebirthed in multiple projects.
I love that.
In fact, I just re-showed and one of my very first ideas, and Corksicle had seen it, but I kind of hey, would you reconsider this now that you're doing more of these products in this market? You weren't 3 years ago.
Right,
Now maybe this makes sense because
right.
some of it is just it's the markets they're in. Because some of what I try to do, and I know you guys are really good at letting your students know, hey, don't show somebody a brand something that has nothing to do with don't show them
Yeah.
a coffee product if they make military gun holsters or something. But at the same time, there is, even like with these products, like they weren't doing stuff with liquor, they were doing wine. If to get them to think a little bit tangentially, what's a product just outside of what they're doing, but they should do, and that their retailers or their customers would buy. So
Yeah. But
I
I
think
love
that's
that. It's so. I mean, you've done 1 million units of the whiskey wedge, maybe somewhere around 500,000 other one. For our fans and our viewers to listen to you hear you say that you've rebirthed products, because it's really hard for people sometimes to move on from their first product to their second project when they're new to it, when they actually start working on it. I'm not talking about dreaming stuff up, but actually working on it. So for you to say, look, I rebirth products all the time, that's very encouraging. I'm very glad you said that, and people need to hear that. That they're not one-trick ponies. They're creative people. They need to keep
yeah.
going, and you don't have to put your garbage in your product in the garbage can. I mean, you just put it in the closet for a bit and you rebirth it. As you said, I've never heard anybody say use it rebirth. I love that.
Well, and you might find a new company later, like, you know what? Let me show you this one idea
Yeah,
that this might be perfect for you. Like,
but you also at the same time you don't hold on to it like this. You kind of put it on the desk and you work on other stuff, and that's really hard for new inventors.
yeah, that's super important. You kind of mentioned that in the waiting game. I mean, I got other things. I got plenty of things to do, but But yeah, you're right. It's like, how are you moving other ideas along while this one, this one's in the pitch phase and you're contacting, and this one you're still tinkering. And I
We
think you're
need
right.
to
That helps you with the
we need
momentum.
to wrap up, but on that note, not all creative people are organized. I don't know if you're organized or you're not organized. Just real quick, how important is organization when you are working on multiple products?
Yes, super, super important in just organizing your time and your energy is what I'm kind of learning. I got to focus. I mean, I have a whole other life and 3 kids, and so it's like I've got to focus my energy as much as my time. And so, to whatever tools that work for you, and just really scheduling and putting things in categories and kind of chunking and focusing time. Whether, hey, I'm pitching and emailing at this time in these days, and I'm putting chunks of time to draw or dream or prototype over here. It's huge. If you don't plan and schedule and organize, it's just going to be really hard to be successful.
Well, I'm glad you heard it right here, guys, from Ryan Bricker. So, Ryan, thank you so much thank you so much for taking your time out of your very busy day to share your experience. It's just real, man. Thanks for sharing the upsides as well as the downsides and your thoughts, and going to help people that they've never reached out to a single company, but they're like, yeah, that's the mindset I need to get in. It's going to be really helpful for folks. So thank you.
Absolutely. And I'm just like one of you guys. I was a student and just read a book and had the bulb go off and just went after it. So I just want to encourage all of you guys to go get after it. Swing the bat. I mean, the worst you could do is, swing and a miss. Oh, well, keep going.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you so much. So I want everybody to take care, keep inventing, and we'll catch you the next time. See you guys. Bye.
There's a great idea in each of us. But it's truly magical to see it come to life. Sharing your creativity with the world has never been easier. We can help.